big news for AFLW fans. Well, kind of big news for AFLW fans. Over the weekend, there was a big report by Caroline Wilson in The Age that looked at... So the headline of it was Skill Errors, Poor Crowds and a $200 million loss, Why the League is Worried About AFLW. And it went into that all 18 clubs got together. The AFL did a presentation to them and they said that the women's game is losing $50 million a year and that the number one priority for AFLW in its pivotal 10th season this year is to increase the on-field performance and get it to improve. It was a lengthy presentation. AFL boss Andrew Dillon and his team acknowledged the significant challenges presented by the rapid and costly expansion of the 9-season-old competition, which has endured diminishing TV audiences and crowd numbers. Mm-hmm. A detailed review of AFLW concluded that the players wish for an expanded season by 2031-32, in which every team plays each other at least once, would come at a cost of $200 million a year. That revelation to club chiefs who gathered for the talks on the Gold Coast came with the AFL presenting a deep dive into the AFLW game style, in which comparative numerical skill errors between the men's and women's competitions was shown. That last point annoys me.
Yeah, so they're saying because it was low scoring, it loses money. Is that what they're saying?
Well, yeah, like comparing the men's and the women's, like the numerical skill errors is being like you can't compare. It's a different game. You literally just can't compare them. But I was pleasantly surprised and pleased with a lot of the reaction to this. It was mostly driven by, and I know I'm in an echo chamber, but it was mostly driven by the AFLW community and people that are really involved in AFLW not being surprised by this and saying, well, yeah, like the decisions that have been made around AFLW haven't exactly allowed it to have larger crowds or even improved. I don't even want to say improved skills because like the skills have been amazing and I'm kind of also like I know that the AFLW is growing and is getting better every year and we talk about it. The girls that come into the pathways are now fully developed and we talk about it all the time, but also like the product is good now. Like we can stop saying like, oh, it's getting there. It's going to get there. Just wait 10 years, 5 years. Like if you watched Geelong Hawthorn last year, it was such a good game. That was at GMHBA Stadium. I can't remember the exact scoreline, but it was something like 68-71. Like it was, and the women play shorter quarters, right? So that's high scoring. It's in a protected stadium. It's between two good sides. That is an example of a good game. But it's the games like Essendon Bulldogs, the Pride game that we went to, that was at the end of the condensed fixture. I know I talk about it a lot, but Essendon had 4 games within 15 days. Like these are young sides that you just burnt out these players. That game was really bad. Bulldogs didn't score. Essendon, I think, had like 3 goals. Like it was not a good game at all. And that's the game that mainstream channels picked up that don't talk about any of the other games. So then there's this public perception that AFLW is a lot worse than it actually is. And there's all of these factors that are contributing to poorer crowds. Like, I don't know, maybe the fact that the last 3 grand finals were all sold out at reduced capacity stadium. So you've got your big games that people are dying to go to. Like imagine if you were like, well, we can't put Collingwood Carlton in the men's at the MCG because unfortunately Gold Coast GWS are only getting 20,000. And so until that game gets 50,000, Collingwood can't play at the MCG. Like why are you limiting the big games and then saying, well, sorry, you're not getting enough crowds? You are getting crowds.
There's an argument, there's a good response to everything that's said about like, well, don't play games at Frankston in 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. And obviously that shit, my mind goes to, there's 2 business models for expanding into women's sport in this country. There's NRLW and there's AFLW, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but AFLW went with get all the teams in as quick as possible, get as many games played as possible. Where NRLW said we're going to slowly expand and we're going to have less teams, we're going to have a higher, the less players, higher quality sport, focus on the state of origin.
Yep.
And they're doing quite well. It's doing really well for NRLW. It's doing better than AFLW objectively.
I would not say objectively, but there is an argument to be made.
So there's 2 models to that, right? So clearly AFL's gone, we're just going to try and buy land, essentially. We're going to try and build as much new infrastructure as humanly possible. 18 new teams within a very small amount of time, right? We're going to bring in 4 a year. So that model reminds me of Netflix in the 2010s, where their model was, we're going to accrue as much debt as possible, but buy land, essentially. We're going to make 1 million shows. Some of them are going to be awful. Some of them are going to be sketch shows from Melbourne. And we're going to buy as much land and we're going to accrue as much debt as possible, with the long-term goal in 20 years' time is we're going to be so big that we're going to go through the hard years now and acquire as many shows as possible so that we're going to be big, but with debt. That's their model. So unless there's they've clearly gone, we're going to get it. We're going to take a huge bunch of risks, build out as quick as possible, but we don't want any of the financial risks of that. So that's just if what they're saying out going out to the public is different to what they're saying is what I imagine, because they surely know that to make that decision a decade ago. It was obviously going to have implications. We're going to go to as many teams as humanly possible. We're going to have 9 games a week at different times in the off-season. Surely, unless you're completely inept, that is not a good business model for entertainment alone. The stupidest way to go about it. But unless you're deliberately acquiring debt.
So 2 things with that. One is that I can't think of a single sporting league or competition that is profitable within its 9th year. So it's the 10th season, 9th year this year. The AFL, VFL, when it started, had so many financial problems when it first started, and then so many clubs in the 80s and 90s were almost going bankrupt, and the league had to step in. In 2015, only 6 clubs were profitable. The league had to step in with all of the others.
Yeah.
It's so normal to have league intervention, to have government intervention. It is not surprising that the AFLW would be making its loss. I just think that if we're presenting that to the public that already want to tear down AFLW so badly and almost take joy in doing so, then you have to present that with context and nuance and the reasons
and you
why.
Did it.
And then the second part to what you're saying is I think that there's also just the AFLW fans and community are smart and reasonable people, and they understand that teething problems are going to come, and that the AFL, to make it work, would try new things all the time and make things work. But there's just been such lack of communication and transparency. Even last year with the condensed fixture, all of the comms just being like, it's going to be great, it's going to be a festival of footy, and all of the AFLW fans and community going, this seems like a really bad idea. And then them just all of the comms just sticking with, it's going to be a festival of footy. How good that there's footy on every day. And the fans are going, we're so fatigued. You're trying to target men's footy fans. We're in men's finals. We're so fatigued. And you're putting games on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and expecting us to tune in at 5 p.m. and then also again at 7 p.m. and then also again at 9 p.m. And also you're making it so that the clubs, the teams that we love watching are playing so many games within such a short time frame that of course the quality is going to be poorer. It's just, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Patty, but we were talking about it earlier, and you said that there's so much dialogue that's come out of AFL House that's always been like, no, the AFLW is great. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. It's in good health. And if there was just more transparency, if you just had the spokespeople of AFL saying, this is what we're struggling with, this is what we're trying to work out, then it would just help so much.
Is there full transparency on where all their money goes as well, though? because they go, we're down 50 million on AFLW. Yeah. I was like, oh, well, how much, where do you, let's see all of the spending then.
So in the report, it was that it takes 100 million to run AFLW a year. The AFL, they get 50 million back, and so there's a $50 million loss.
Right, but I want to see just business class flights. Yeah. I want to see show it all.
Right, is that 50 million broken down into the TV deal is specifically for the W? Yeah.
Great question.
That's all. Yeah, because if you want to start talking about where you're losing money to help an argument or to help him say, I don't want to see in a month's time, well, see, now we're going to do this as a reaction to that. I want to see, that should be open to proper journalists like yourself, where they're spending all their money and where money is coming from and where it's going.
Yeah.
Also, the only thing I would add is this tactic, right, of gathering land, as you put it, it's not necessarily a bad tactic either. Companies done it for years, right? Coles is want to be first to have a Coles in Manda. Let's build. But you just got to back it in and put a strategy behind it.
That's my argument. If I was looking at NRLW and AFLW, I would 100% do the AFL model, which is get all the fan bases engaged. A percentage of the men's teams will go and follow that sport. There'll be new people who are just following AFLW, but that's the way to do it. Make them have young people growing up now supporting them.
Yeah, invest in it in that way.
Be aware that it's going to be a 20, 30-year investment in the same way Queensland
And I'm
is.
sure they are, right? So it's like, what's to be gained by these optics coming out? It's all good, and then having these reports out. So, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I just feel like the onus is constantly put on players that they're not making the product watchable when the product is, in my opinion, I know a lot of people have different opinions, watchable as it is. I think it's fantastic. Like, I know I said outside. If you're going to talk about that Essendon Bulldogs game, then also talk about the Matilda Schultz mark. Like, also talk about Chloe Malloy. Like, also talk about Jazzy Gardner and every time she touches the ball. Like, you cannot only talk about the bad stuff.
I feel like the rhetoric that I see or the discussion I see is often from ad agencies talking. It's not from the AFLW. Like, it's about Taylor Harris's kick from Colgate or from Google or someone. It's never the AFL controlling the narrative. It's like ad agencies who are more invested in the W than the league itself.